In 1978, an entire third-grade class vanished during recess. No screams, no signs of struggle. Their backpacks were still lined up by the door, juice boxes unopened, lunches untouched. For decades, that wing of the school remained sealed. Until last week, during renovations, a sledgehammer cracked through a shared classroom wall. Inside the hollow space were 14 pairs of small, dustless shoes, each arranged neatly in a circle, toes pointing in. And in the center, a recorder was still running. From inside the wall, a child whispers, "We're not alone anymore. Dare to listen." Before the next voice says your name, the first thing Marcus noticed was the smell, not of rot, but of waiting. Old wood swollen with silence, walls painted shut, the scent of chalk dust mixed with floor wax and something quieter, almost sorrowful, like hymn pages sealed in damp air. He hadn't meant to find anything. The building wasn't supposed to still exist, let alone open. South Welmridge Elementary had closed in 1982 after a boiler fire no one fully reported. Even the council files only labeled it Event Unknown, no further public record. It had been quiet since. Until renovation crews showed up last month, and someone sent Marcus a scan of the floor plan. There were 2 hallways where there should have been one. He came alone. The grounds were cordoned off, but no one guarded the front. The key worked, even though he didn't remember how he got it. Inside, the dust felt wrong, too orderly. No scatter, no wind trails, just stillness. Like someone had vacuumed the decay into patterns. His boots creaked as he moved down the central corridor. He passed room A, his old homeroom. Desks bolted to the floor like they feared being taken. Nameplates removed, but their outlines remained. In ghost-smudged brass, room C was further down. Locked. In between them, nothing. Only he turned back. Tapped his knuckles along the drywall between rooms A and C. It should have been a supply closet. He remembered the janitor once telling them, "Don't go knocking in the gap. There's nothing in there that'll knock back." But something did. A second too late. Like breath trapped behind plaster, Marcus paused. That was when the light changed. The sun had been slanting in from the front entrance, but now it filtered in cold, as if the windows had changed shape. Pale, dusty blue light. It pooled around his boots like water. He followed it. The wall before him looked newer than the rest. Wrong paint. Wrong texture. The edges didn't match the ceiling line. He pressed his palm flat, hollow, not just in sound but in meaning. He pulled out the small crowbar from his satchel. He hadn't come to demolish, just to prove he was wrong. But he wasn't. The plaster cracked easily, peeling away in chunks like old skin. A sliver of darkness opened up, and air moved past his face, not rushing out, but being pulled in. He widened the gap. Shoved the flashlight in first. The beam stuttered. Then held. A room. Intact. A chalkboard. Desk small, too small. Arranged. In a circle. In the center, shoes. 14 pairs, tiny, lined with care. Facing inward, Marcus pressed both hands to the broken edge of the wall. The dust inside hadn't settled randomly. It spiraled. One pair of shoes was different, laceless, heel torn, one stained dark inside the toe. His breath caught. His own childhood photo had shown that exact tear. He stepped through. The air changed. Not colder, quieter. There was no mold. No animal droppings, no graffiti. Nothing to suggest 30 years of abandonment. The walls looked wiped clean, except one. The far side. Covered in drawings, charcoal, crayon, scratched in places too high for children to reach. Eyes, spirals, bell towers, rows of open mouths, and one drawing repeated. A hand on a wall with a line of shoes beneath it. He moved toward the desk nearest. Him. On it lay a burnt photograph, edges crisped, center intact. The class photo. He remembered that day. The girls wore uniforms. The boys, plain shirts. The teacher smiled stiffly, but there were 15 children. Marcus blinked. Counted again. The original photo had shown 14. He knew this. He had this picture, or he used to. But in this version, at the edge of the frame, a girl stood, facing away. Her face turned, blurred, not motion blur, but as if it had never been drawn properly. Her shoes were the same as the pair in the center of the circle. He backed away. Behind the chalkboard, something clicked. Not a door. A drawer. It slid out slow, resistant, as if unused for years. Inside lay a rolled parchment, brittle and yellowing. A hymn torn from a book. Lay them down beneath the stone. Let the silence make them known. He turned it over. On the back, scribbled in graphite, she said, "Don't sing if you can still hear the bell." He dropped it. The drawer had closed. He hadn't touched it. Marcus stared, lungs tightening. He reached for his phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no clock. The time display read, the 17th of September 1978, 11:32 a.m. That was the day the class went missing. He stepped backward. His foot bumped one of the shoes. The recorder in the center of the circle clicked on. No one had touched it. Tape spun. First, static. Then the soft scrape of a desk being moved. Then singing. Off-key, children's voices. One louder than the others. Marcus couldn't move. The song faded. A whisper followed, slow, childlike. We only hid because they told us it was a game. He turned toward the hole he'd made in the wall. It wasn't there. Just more unbroken plaster, smooth, solid. He ran to the chalkboard. Tried to push, pull. Nothing moved. Then footsteps. Light. Behind him. He turned. All 14 pairs of shoes were now facing outward. He stumbled to the desk. The burnt photo was gone. In its place, a mirror. Cracked. Not reflecting him, but a classroom. Full. Children stared out. Still, wide-eyed. One of them him, a younger version, holding the burnt photo. Tears on his face. And beside him, the girl from the edge of the picture. Finally turned to face the camera. No mouth, just a stitched line. Marcus dropped the mirror. It shattered silently. No echo. He stepped back. One foot landed in a shoe. It fit. His breath fogged on a pane of glass not in front of him. And on that fogged surface, a handprint appeared, smaller than his newer. Above it, something scratched. "You never left." And behind him, the recorder. Still spun, still whispering, "Stay in your seats. The game isn't over." The shoes had not moved. Marcus returned 2 days after breaching the sealed wall. The maintenance staff had already quit, citing headaches and inexplicable nosebleeds. The contractor refused to step back inside. Only the district archivist remained, an older woman with trembling hands, and a ring of keys that didn't open anything relevant. He unlocked the door to the West Wing again. This time, he brought gloves, a digital recorder, and the photo burnt at the edges that he had found tucked into the drawer that shouldn't exist. Inside the hidden room, everything was exactly as he left it. Desks in a circle, chalk dust untouched. The air felt tighter now, thick like holding breath in water, but it wasn't the air. It was the attention. He knelt beside the shoes. 14 pairs. All tiny, all facing inward. The laces were neat, too neat. Not the way children tie their own shoes. Not the over-under loops or crooked bunny ears. These had been tied with adult precision. Taut, symmetrical, the way nurses bind limbs to gurneys. Tongues flat, solace aligned. And yet, one pair didn't fit the pattern. Right shoe, fine. Left shoe, darker. Marcus leaned closer. The stain inside the heel wasn't dirt. It had dried too deep into the canvas. Reddish brown, fibrous. He pulled out a sterile swab, dabbed the cloth, bagged it. Then he looked again. That same pair, The stitching near the toe was coming undone. The shape inside felt softer than shoe padding. He did not open it. Instead, he turned to the desk, the one facing away from the others. Where the tape recorder had been, it was missing. In its place now, a folded page. Marcus hesitated, then lifted it with gloved hands. A hymn page, brittle and yellow, torn at the crease. "Come, children, kneel beside the gate. The bell has rung. It's getting late." He turned it over. Someone had scribbled over the music with what looked like nail scratches. Underneath, faint words. "She doesn't like when we stop the song." He set it down. Light broke through the corner of the room, through a cracked door that hadn't been there last time. No hinges, no frame, just a seam in the plaster. Thin, like a breath line. A sliver of gold light slipped across the floor. He stepped toward it. The floor creaked. Behind him. A soft thud. He turned. One of the shoes had fallen on its side, the pair with the blood inside. Marcus scanned the circle. One pair now pointed outward. A whisper crackled from his pocket. His recorder had turned on. Playback. Not static voice. "A child's. We were told to sit still. If we moved, she'd start over." He dropped the recorder. It hissed, then looped. "She'd start over. She'd start over." He backed into the wall, gasping. His shoulder pressed something soft. A drawer slid open from inside the plaster. It hadn't existed a moment ago. Inside, a small hand mirror, oval, backed with silver filigree blackened with heat. He pulled it free. The glass rippled like water. When it settled, it showed the classroom, not as it was, but filled. 14 children sat in the desks, all facing inward, eyes wide, mouths closed, not blinking. At the center of their circle, a woman, her face scraped white, hands folded, lips moving, though no sound came. The mirror cracked. Not across but up, as if something had pushed from within. He dropped it. It didn't shatter. The air bent. Marcus looked again at the desks. Still empty, but the hymn page was gone. He stepped forward, aiming his flashlight toward the far wall. A crack had begun to split across it. Hairline, jagged, alive, like a wound learning how to open. He aimed the beam upward. A name once painted over had begun to bleed through. Mirabelle. Below it, faint but legible. Last called, never answered. Marcus's breathing grew shallow. He turned. Needed to leave, needed air, needed something normal, and found that the entrance had vanished. Just wall. Seamless. Pale. He pressed both palms against it. Breath fogged the surface. Not his. On the glass pane above the far desk, fog bloomed again. And in it, a handprint. Small. Deliberate. The same mirror now lay upright. The children were standing, and in the circle, the woman had turned. Her face was still blurred, but her hand was raised, pointing, not at the mirror, at him. Marcus staggered back. His foot crushed something soft. The shoe. The one with blood. Inside it now, a photograph. New. Of this room, taken from above. Like security footage. Marcus in the center. 14 pairs of shoes. Around him, but 15 shadows. Dust lifted as if someone had just stepped away. Behind the shoe circle, the wall whispered, "She told us to sit, but you stood up." The recorder clicked. Then. A different voice. Adult. Female. Please confirm. Names not matching existing records. Suspected fabrication. Another click. Then the child again. Dust remembers what the living deny. The tape stopped. And every pair of shoes was now facing him. It was never on the official roster. Marcus sat cross-legged in the dust-lit office, a beam of morning light knifing through the broken shutter. The ledger on the desk was stamped approved. 1977, but the signature page had been sliced out. A clean, violent tear. Above the absent name, the word faculty had been typed in all caps, then faintly redacted by ink that bled upward instead of out. He exhaled. Pages from the yearbook lay fanned before him. 5 teachers listed, only 3 with photos. No one smiled. A hollow space existed between each frame, as if the image had flinched. The final page had been scorched along the binding, but one face remained blurry, underexposed, and strangely angled, as if the photographer had tried to catch her leaving. The frame, she wore a dark cardigan. One hand rested on a desk, but her fingers were wrong. Not posed, braced. As though she were holding herself steady, there was no name under the photo. In the margin. Someone had scribbled, "Not staff, still came." Marcus stared. He'd seen that face. 2 weeks ago, it surfaced in a missing persons database from a different state, 40 years older. Same tilt of the mouth. Same left eye slightly dimmer than the right. Listed as a substitute teacher. Last seen outside a library in Nebraska. 2003. No connection to this district. No transfer paperwork. No higher logs, and yet her handwriting was here. He pulled the lesson plans from the drawer he'd cracked open. Yesterday, they smelled of vinegar and smoke. The ink, smeared in places, was cursive. Dated in blue pen, October 14th, 1977. Each sheet bore her initials in the corner. M.H. The same mark from the Nebraska police files. The next page bore a different mark. A thin, vertical line that extended the length of the page. Almost a seam. Marcus ran a gloved hand over it. It wasn't ink. It was a crease deep folded in. He opened it like a gate. Inside, an embedded page. Pasted to the inner spine. Older. A roll call of some kind. Names of children. Each line was marked attended. Then withdrawn. No dates. Just one word, repeated 14 times. Then, a 15th name. Half erased. Marcus tilted the page toward the light. It glinted, not ink, graphite, finger smudged. He heard a sound soft, like papers shifting without touch. He turned to the file cabinet. Behind him, sealed yesterday, stood a jar. The air had changed. Not colder, thicker, like the room remembered a noise. He crossed to it, hesitated, then opened the drawer. At first, only dust. Then, a hymn page. Folded. Torn in half. We kneel, we sing, we do not speak. Below it, a photo. Burnt at the top, child's drawing on the back, 4 figures. 1 tall, 3 smaller, all holding hands. No faces. Behind the drawing, wedged deep into the metal groove, a mirror. Round. Clouded, thumbprint at the center. He lifted it carefully, reflected in the surface, the empty desk. The chair beside it, and behind that something that shouldn't be. A second chair, someone seated, blurred face, hair pulled tight. Hands folded. The mirror shook in his hand. He dropped it. It didn't hit the ground. It simply didn't land. He backed away. Breath fogged in front of him. Not from his mouth. Across the window pane, finger traced. Letters :M.H. Marcus turned back to the desk. The lesson plan now open to a different page. One he hadn't touched. It read, Lesson 5, Vocal Obedience. Nonverbal reinforcement. Instructions beneath had been redacted with correction fluid. Scraped over. Beneath the whiteout, indentation still pressed into the paper. He held it sideways in the light. The word compliance was repeated over and over. Fainter each time. Until it stopped entirely. Then, they were told to stay seated even after they disappeared. He turned away. The cabinet drawer slid shut behind him. Without sound. He stared at the wall. At the wallpaper. It had begun to peel back, not from time, but from underneath. Something was pushing. A name had surfaced in the plaster. Light letters. As though burned from within, Marla Hollow. Same initials. Same woman. She had never been listed, never employed, never confirmed. And yet here she was, in records, in ink, in drawings, in faces. Marcus stepped back. His heel struck something soft. He looked down. Child's shoe. Untied. Its partner now beneath the desk. Neither had been here. Yesterday, he crouched and reached for it. Inside, a folded note. He opened it. 4 lines. In graphite, the room moved. We didn't. She came from the mirror. We closed our eyes. It didn't help. He rose quickly. Too quickly. The mirror was on the desk again. Upright. But the room it showed. Wasn't this one. It was a hallway. Lights off. Footsteps his. Approaching. Marcus turned to the doorway. No hallway. Just blank wall. Then from the mirror. Whispers. Looping. Double quotes. Still. Came. Still came. Still came. He looked closer. The hallway in the mirror was getting closer. The steps approaching. Slow. Uneven. Then it stopped. A flash. White dress. The blur of a lanyard. The shape of a key. Not Marcus's key. The mirror cracked down the center. Behind him. Soft rustle. He turned. A drawer had opened. The hymn was gone. In its place. A photograph. Not from the yearbook. New. Glossy. It showed the classroom from above. Empty. Desks, but 5 shadows near the front. Adults. Only 3 had faces. The 4th stood slightly behind the rest. The 5th stood at the back, hand on a child's shoulder, face too blurred to read. But something on her wrist glinted. A silver chain. A key. The same key Marcus had found in the shoe 3 days ago. He turned the photo over. Handwritten. If not hired, who gave her a key? He dropped the photo. The mirror was gone, but the wall beside him now held a scene. Hairline. Faint breath of gold light leaking through. From the other side, the sound of chalk on slate. Rhythmic. Looping. Like writing a sentence again and again. Then silence. Then a voice not childlike. Measured. Adult. Calm. Double quotes present. Not listed. Marcus stepped toward the seam. The chalk sound began again, from behind the wall. A whisper. Not frightened. Teaching. We kneel, we sing, we do not speak. He pressed his ear to the wall. One name repeated, faintly scratched, each repetition slightly misaligned. Marla, Marla. Then a pause. A second name whispered lower. Marcus. The breath fogged the glass beside him, and across it, fresh handwriting appeared, still came. They called it a game, but no one ever said what the rules were. It started with the lights. Not off, just dimmed. A flicker, not failure. The kind of light a room wears when it forgets it has windows. Pale, sickly, colorless. Tess remembered the way Sister Gwen's voice had sounded, measured, too warm. Like an old music box wound, too slow. Let's play, everyone hide. No noise, no peeking, not until the lights go off. She never said when they'd come back on. Tess hadn't remembered that part until now. The journal they'd found in the vent shaft was hers. The initials matched TL 1978. Pressed inside the front cover was a crayon rubbing of a floor tile, the texture carefully traced. She'd drawn it over and over. The tile, the corner of the room, the edge of the chalkboard. But the room she drew had no door, only 4 corners. No way in, no way out. And in the bottom right, in every version, a hand. Not a drawing of a hand, an imprint. Pressed hard. Like the wax paper had been dented by something real. But Tess's fingers were too small. This one had length, thinness. Adult. The hand wasn't hers. Marcus stood in the broken classroom now. The journal open on the floor beside the old radiator. The pages fluttered in a draft that had no source. No window was open. The glass had been painted over decades ago, turned to opaque milk. He stared at the corner of the room, the same one she'd drawn. A faint scuff across the wall. A darker square beneath the paint. He stepped closer. The shape of something once mounted. A speaker, no closer to a vent, but not one that circulated air. This had no intake, no output. Just a hollow slit in the plaster, sealed decades before. He placed his ear against it. At first, silence. then we're still playing. Barely above breath, not echo. Not memory. Live. He recoiled. There had been no recordings logged from this wing. All of V units removed in 82. The cables ripped from the wall. A budget cut. A safety concern. The report said renovation. But nothing was ever replaced. Still, something had spoken. He turned toward the chalkboard. The writing remained from years past, ghost letters etched into slate. But now something new. The chalk sat untouched on the ledge. And yet, beside the old multiplication table, someone had written. Not everyone came out. Each word pressed harder than the last. The final letter cracked the board. Marcus glanced down. At his feet, a drawer had appeared. He hadn't noticed it before. It extended from the teacher's desk. Like a slow breath. Quiet. Intentional. Inside. A photo, burnt at the corner. Tarnished. 4 children. Beneath the desk. Hiding. Not frightened, waiting. And in the far background, a silhouette just past the doorway. Leaning in. No features. Only the hands showed. Both flat against the doorframe. Fingers SPLAYED. Marcus blinked. And the figure in the photo was gone. He turned. The room still empty. He slid the photo back inside. There was something beneath it. Hymn ripped from the same hymnal as the one found 2 chapters ago. But this one was different. It had annotations. In a child's handwriting. Don't sing if the lights flicker. Don't look if the door creaks. Don't count if she counts first. The name at the top was Tess's. The same Tess who, according to records, transferred schools in spring of 1979. But her journal, found behind the radiator, was dated October 1978. She never left. Not officially. Marcus stepped back. His shoe struck something soft. A child's shoe. The same from chapter 2. But now the laces had been tied neatly. Perfect loops. He picked it up. Inside. A folded square of paper. Tess, single quotes, S handwriting again. We stayed quiet. Even when the door stopped. Being a door. He turned toward the door. Its hinges were gone. The wood-painted beige now shimmered faintly. Like varnish still drying. And at its base, faint fog. Breathing, but not from the room, from behind it. He took one step closer. The crack at the top of the door moved. Hairline. Subtle. But it traveled slowly down the center. As if the door had blinked. The lights above HUMMED. Then dimmed. Not out. Just enough to lose color. And across the floor, in soft pencil, lines began to form. Unseen hand. Drawing. Another classroom. Another map. No doors. Just corners. And this time, 7 hands drawn. Last hand larger. Not drawn. Pressed. Marcus crouched. Ran his fingers across the floor. Warm. Not dust. Chalk. Fresh. The drawing hadn't been there when he entered. It was being drawn. He stood fast. Behind him. The chalkboard now read, "No one wins, you only last." And beside it, a date, not written. By chalk, scratched into the board, October 14th, 1978. The same day that journal had stopped, he turned to the desk. The hymn now missing. In its place, a mirror. Round. Small. Cracked down the center. He picked it up. In its surface. Not this room. A darker one. Same layout. But someone else inside. A child. Crouched in the corner. Hands over ears. Behind her, the same. Adult figure, leaning in. Again. One lifted index finger over mouth. She. The mirror. FOGGD. Marcus set it down. The journal. Flipped open again. Last page. A line added just now. In graphite, still hiding. Then behind the wall, a knock. Not hard. Deliberate. 3 taps. Then 2. Then silence. He turned back toward the drawer. The photo had changed. Now 5 children, all crouched. And at the center a 6th. Not drawn. A negative space. As if someone had been there. Then erased. Only the outline remained. and on its arm, a bracelet, not visible, but suggested, the faint curve, the metallic shine. He looked to the corner where the journal had been found, and there it was. The bracelet, lying perfectly still. He approached. Bent down. Inside the band, initials T.L. He lifted it. A whisper near his ear. Game's still going. He turned. Nothing there, but across the window glass a birthmark. And beside it, AAANDPRINT. Too large for a child. Too wrong for an adult. Elongated. Bent. And beneath it, traced in moisture, you're it. The blueprint was folded in half when he found it, tucked behind a loose ceiling tile in the janitor's closet. Dust clung to the creases like soot from a long extinguished fire. Someone had marked Room A and Room C in faded red pen, but in between them, written in faint graphite that had smeared with age, was something else. Room B. Not just labeled circled. As if someone needed to remember where it was before it vanished again. Marcus turned the page. On the next revision, dated 6 months later, Room B was gone. The paper still bore the faint indent where the pencil had been, but the ink denied its existence. It was like watching memory dissolve mid-sentence. He checked the floor plan again. The hallway between A and C was longer than it needed to be. One light didn't match the others. The spacing was off. Too symmetrical to be accidental. He walked it, 12 steps from room A15 to Room C, but right in the middle, step 13, his footfall changed. Not louder, not softer. Just different, like the air didn't land the same. He stood there, listening. The wall beside him was painted the same beige as the rest of the school. But there was a seam in the brickwork, a thin vertical line that didn't run to the ceiling. Half a frame, not a doorway, not anymore. He pressed his palm to it. It was warmer than the wall should have been, and it hummed, not mechanically. Not electricity. Something slower, deeper, like breath behind plaster. He reached for the crowbar. The drywall peeled like old skin. Beneath it wood. Beneath that, a name, Room B, painted in black, then sanded down, then repainted in beige. Layered denial. He pried harder. The door came loose. It opened inward, and the hallway behind it should not have existed. The linoleum was darker, greener. A style phased out before Marcus was born. The fluorescent lights flickered in staggered intervals, casting overlapping shadows that didn't quite align with their sources. The air was thick with ammonia and chalk, but no. Recent classes had been held here. The dust said otherwise. He stepped in. No footprints in the layer on the floor. No disturbance in the air. But on the far wall, a mirror, cracked down the center. Same as the one he'd found in Chapter 4. This one reflected the hallway, except it didn't show him. Only the wall. And beside the mirror, pinned under yellowed tape, was a name tag. Marla, written in looping cursive. Beneath the name, no title. No grade. Only a stain brown, rusted over the bottom half. Age, not time. Decay, not wear. He turned it over. Nothing. But as he set it down, the tape crackled back to life, curling around the corner like it wanted to hold the name again. A sound echoed behind him, a drawer opening. There hadn't been a desk. He turned. One now stood in the center of the hallway. Although the hallway was narrower now, inside the drawer, a burnt photo. Familiar. A group of children, same photo as before. But now, they weren't huddled. They were facing forward. Smiling. Except their eyes had been scratched out. Each one. And in the background, a CHALKBORD. One line still legible. Room B doesn't let you leave. It lets you listen. He folded the photo carefully, slipped it into his coat. A sound behind him, breath against glass. He looked up. A window. That wasn't there before. Not to the outside, to another classroom. But no room should have been adjacent to this corridor. Inside the glass, the lights were Off, but movement pulsed faintly. Not bodies. Drawings. Papers, fluttering on the walls. Children's sketches, each one depicting the same thing. A doorless room. A figure in the corner. Mirror showing something that wasn't in the room itself. He stared into the glass, and for a moment, the reflection blinked. He stepped back. The hallway shortened. He could see the door again, slightly ajar. Letting in just enough light to suggest escape. He turned, ready to go. And stopped. The floor had changed. No more. Linoleum. Wood now. Old. Warped, covered in scratches. Initials, carved layered over each other. Some legible RLKT plus K to Marla, again. Not a student, but always present. And beside the last carving, a handprint, pressed into the wood. Not stained. INDENTED, sunken, like it had dissolved through years ago and was never filled. Marcus stepped over it. The door creaked wider. As he reached for it. The lights above him buzzed. One flickered hard, then burst. A shower of glass, but no. Shards hit the floor. They hovered mid-air, like time had slowed. Just for him, then fell. All at once, he didn't flinch. He walked through the dust, toward the doorway. A whisper passed over his shoulder. We called her Miss Marla, but she never corrected us. He turned. Nothing. Just the chalkboard again, now in this corridor. A single line written in broken cursive. Her name was never on file. The mirror cracked further. He didn't touch it. He stepped into the light of the outer hall. Looked back. Room B was already closing. The door made no sound as it shut, but the air outside smelled of bleach and silence. He stood in the janitor's closet again, the blueprint still in his hand, still unfolded. But now, a note had been scrawled in red. Do not re-enter. Not printed. Written. Fresh. He looked down at his jacket pocket. The photo was gone. In its place, the name tag still stained, but the name was different now. Not Marla. Marcus. He dropped it, turned to leave, but behind the door, a knock. 3 slow taps. He pressed his palm against the wood, felt nothing, but from the other side, muffled, fragile a voice. I never corrected them either. The photograph was wrong, not corrupted, not torn, just impossible. 14 children faced the camera, hands folded, shoes lined up neatly on gravel, hair brushed flat as if by trembling adult hands. A playground behind them, rusted swings, blue-painted monkey bars faded to gray. The Polaroid had no date stamped, no crease, no notes on the back, but she was there. Off to the right. Just outside the frame, yet inside it. Perfectly centered in the glass of the school window. 5th, 10th child. No name. Same dress in every decade. Same expression. Not smiling. Not blurred. Looking directly at him. Ellis set the photo down. The air in the archive room had stopped moving. The moment he entered, no hum from the light above. No buzz from the dehumidifier that should have been running in the corner. Only silence layered on silence. He opened the manila folder again. Inside, 4 more photos. All different years. 1952, 1966, 1981, 1995. Different children. Different teachers. Different furniture. But always the same girl. Always in the reflection. Same posture. Same window. Always watching. He picked up the oldest image. The playground wasn't even paved yet. Just dirt and pale grass. The children stood closer together, like they had been told not to move. But their eyes darted toward the frame's edge. All but one. She looked straight into the lens or past it. Ellis tilted the photo slightly. The sun shifted in the room and caught the sheen on the film. A hairline crack ran through the center of the girl's face. He hadn't noticed it before. The plastic hadn't split. It had peeled. As if someone had tried to lift her, erase her. But COULDN, single quotes T. He'd aside. Reached for the ledger on the Desk, 1952 enrollment, 14 names, 1,966, 14. 1981, 14. 1,995, 14. Never, 15. Yet her shoes were visible in 2 photos. Patent leather, unscuffed, facing forward. Laces perfectly knotted. A mirror half visible in the background showed her. Again, only her. The others didn't reflect. He stood, the filing cabinet to his left. Click dash softly. Not the whole drawer. Just the latch. He hadn't touched it. He opened it anyway. Inside, hymn sheets. Torn, stained, some burned at the edges. One corner carried the number 36 in red pen. Another had the words, "He watches what they hide," scrawled in the margins. Beneath them, a single envelope. No return address. Just a note on the front. Not for parents. He unfolded the contents at a drawing, crayon and graphite. Paper yellowed by time and something wetter than water. A classroom, crudely sketched square, windowless. 14 children hiding beneath desks. In the corner. A girl, not hiding. Staring forward, hands too long, dress too straight. And beside her, a handprint, not hers, smeared in dark wax. He turned it over. The paper felt damp, but there was no visible stain, just a single line. "She doesn't blink unless you look away." Ella stood slowly. Every breath now felt layered his, and one waiting behind it. He crossed to the archive window. It faced the north corridor. No one there. He checked the glass anyway, only his reflection, and then, not behind him, beside him. Her head tilted just slightly. Face unmoving. The exact dress from every photo. White collar, bow loose, small tear near the hem. Shoes too clean. He turned. Fast. No one. He reached for the knob of the locked cabinet in the corner. The one maintenance said. Hadn't opened in years. It clicked. Without pressure. Inside, 6 Polaroids, taped to the wood paneling. Each with a number on the back. Each showing the same hallway. Different decades. Room 3BA. Corridor that was no longer on the map. One photo showed the window from the outside. The reflection of a class. Inside, 14 children raising their hands. And her, in the glass. Looking out. Same face, same age, a hand pressed against the window pane. He looked at the edge of the photo. They're next to the frame, pressed against the frame. HANDPR, Einda. Faint. Greasy. Real. Ella stepped back, breathing through his shirt sleeve. On the archive door, condensation had formed. 3 breath-fogged circles. Not fingerprints. Just presence. Watching. He turned and saw the mirror above the sink in the corner. It was angled up. But now, it tilted down. His reflection blinked. He hadn't. He turned off the light. Waited. Nothing. Then, one by one, the images on the desk slid just slightly. Not pulled. Adjusted. The topmost, the 1966 photo, now showed something else. A second hand on the glass. One child inside the classroom was pointing. But the direction didn't match. Ellis checked the others. A pattern, her angle in each image, had changed. Over time, she moved closer to the edge of the reflection. Less window. More frame. Less school. More observer. He opened the drawer again. It didn't exist anymore. Only a gap. He reached toward it and touched nothing. No air. No cold. Just stillness. Like breath behind drywall. He stood again. On the wall now, where the light had flickered earlier, a shadow appeared. Not cast. Embedded. A shape of a child, outlined by years of grime that hadn't settled where her shoulders had been. But that wall had never had posters. Never decorations. Never anything to leave. That shape. He backed away. The window no longer showed the hallway, only her. Closer. She hadn't moved, but the glass had, now pressed flush against the inside of the archive. He reached for the light switch, flipped it twice. Nothing. Just silence. Then from behind the window, knocked. 2 fingers, Light, rhythmic. Not asking to be let in. Reminding. He stepped forward. Her eyes didn't follow, because they had never moved. They had always been locked here. Waiting for acknowledgement. Not rescue. Just confirmation. Ellis picked up the photo again. The first one. And in the edge of the image, scratched so faintly into the plastic, it looked like dust. You saw me. He blinked. On the back of the same photo, beneath the faded school stamp, was new handwriting. His. But he hadn't written it. She's in every room with glass. He turned to the mirror, his reflection gone. Only her. Standing behind him. Unmoving. Unbling. But not reflected. Just there. He reached toward it. And from deep inside the hallway somewhere, behind the archive, a drawer slammed. And a child's voice whispered, "They only asked about the ones who screamed." He turned, fast. No one. But on the desk now one. Last photo. Still warm. Still developing. Hazy. Playground. 13 children. One shadow in the glass, and one hand on Ellis's shoulder, already printed, already part of the image. And the girl? Not watching this time. Smiling. It wasn't the sound that unsettled her, not at first. It was the warmth. Cassette sat beside her, hand on the metal desk, its plastic casing sticky with residual heat, like it had just been pulled from a car. Glove box in summer. But this room hadn't seen daylight in 30 years. Not since the foundation repairs that swallowed half the records department beneath concrete and denial. The only source of heat was supposed to be the small electric lamp she'd brought, flickering now with a kind of indecision that made her stomach tighten. Cora pressed play. Static. Thick and wet, like cloth dragged through a drain. Then silence. Then a voice, not quite whispering. Not quite awake. September 3rd, September 3rd, September 3rd, over and over. Each repetition slurred slightly differently. One urgent, one weeping. One said like a prayer. That date hadn't happened yet. She checked her phone. July 29th. Cassette B wasn't there. She was holding only one tape labeled A. The logbook referenced both, but B was withheld pending review. Initialed. Twice. Same hand. 2 different pens. Same name redacted. She tried rewinding the tape. Click. Whir. Then something odd backwards chanting. Rhythmic. Voices stacked over each other. Too many syllables and not enough space. She pressed stop. Beneath her hand, the cassette was warm again. She stood, unsure why. The filing cabinet in the corner had one drawer slightly open. Just enough to feel like a suggestion. That drawer hadn't been open when she came in. She would have noticed. The rust along the rail had flaked off onto the floor like dried blood powder. Now it sat clean, curved like it had just been used. She approached it slowly. A child's shoe sat inside, not a pair. Just one. Dustless. Pale green canvas. One lace missing. She hadn't noticed the hymn page beneath it until she touched the shoe and the paper stuck. Hymn number 143. Tarry not, for the Watcher's return. The melody was gone, but the lyrics remained, half erased by moisture and time. He will wait by mirror light, 1 foot still and 1 in flight per. What is heard but not yet said, keeps the living near the dead. The shoe smelled like wet plaster. And salt. She placed it back. The cassette player hissed, though she hadn't turned it on again. Then came another voice, deeper this time. A different recording, or buried beneath the previous one. It's not backwards, you're just listening from the wrong year. Cora's chest tightened. She checked the machine. Stop was engaged. The tape wasn't moving. And yet, September 3rd. Now whispered in her own voice. The drawer she'd just closed clicked again. A mirror leaned against the far wall. It hadn't been there earlier. She would have seen it. Would have noticed the frame red wood. The edges melted like fire had licked it once and spared only the reflection. The mirror didn't show her. It showed the room. but a different version. No dust. No boxes. No taped over windows. Children seated on the floor. Facing away. One desk in the corner. A tape recorder spinning. Same model as hers. She blinked. The mirror didn single quotes d. She leaned in. In the reflection. One of the children turned. Mouth open. No sound. Hands lifted to cover the ears. One of them was wearing a pale green shoe. Single lace. Cora backed away. The cassette player whirred on by itself. Rewinding again. No button pressed. The air thinned. Her breath fogged the glass window of the record room door, except she hadn't breathed in that direction. A second breath fog bloomed beside it. She turned. No one. The redacted ledger sat open now. Page torn, but not missing. Folded back sharply like someone had yanked it, changed their mind, then pressed it down. The name she'd been looking for, S. Holloway. Substitute, September 1977, had been crossed out. But in the margin, someone had scrawled. She brought the tapes. But she never took attendance. The mirror flickered again, now only one child in the reflection. Not sitting. Standing. Right. Next to the recorder. Mouth still open. As if looping the same syllable. Over and over. She picked up the cassette. Still warm. She flipped it. No side B. Just the words etched faintly into the plastic. You were there too. Cora's fingers trembled. She checked the recorder body. Dust covered everything, except the eject button. Pressed clean. She opened it. Inside, tape ran too long. The spools didn't match the label length. It should have been 60 minutes. This had more, wound tighter. As if overwritten, a burnt photo was curled beneath the machine, half of a classroom. Faces blackened. But one stood out, not burnt. Not blurred. Hers. At 10. But she'd never gone to this school. Not that she remembered. In the photo. Her hand held a tape recorder. Not the one she used now, but similar. Older. Heavy plastic. Same brand. She turned it over. Someone had written. In block letters, ask about the missing hour. The room shifted slightly. She didn't hear it. She felt it. The floor under her solace had changed softer. Like vinyl under old desks, the window behind her now reflected light. Though no bulb was on. She turned to the mirror, and now she was in it. But the recorder in the reflection spun. Not hers. Hers was silent. The sound was only in the glass. She watched. Herself reach forward. Hit play. Static. Then her own voice. Layered with the child's. September 3rd. September 3rd. Don't let them put the desks back. Then silence. Then, we're still under here. Cora stepped back. The air changed again. This time, the drawer that hadn't existed earlier rolled open by itself. Inside, another cassette. Labeled, Cassette B. No warmth. But the floor below. Her feet pulsed once. She didn't put it in. She didn't touch it. But the recorder clicked anyway. Play. And this time chanting, clearer. Children's voices layered with adults. As if rehearsed. As if recited every year, regardless of who was enrolled. She takes the year you don't remember. She speaks in the calendar's silence. Her name was not filed. Her date was not lived. Then a long breath. Right next to the recorder. Mike, then say it. A pause. Then Cora's voice, shaking, much younger. Don't put me in the desk again. I remember now. Click. Silence. And then, behind the wall 3 knocks. 1, slow. Too fast. The same rhythm as the hymn's final stanza. Turned. The mirror was now blank. Just the room. Just her. But on the desk, the burnt photo had uncurled slightly, enough to see the edge. A date had been written in ash. September 3rd, 22:05. Tomorrow. She looked at the recorder. Still. Running. Still warm. But no tape inside. Just sound. And behind her, the filing cabinet began to hum. Low. Rhythmic. Like chanting. Only this time, it was in her voice. She turned slowly inside the open drawer. A Polaroid. Still developing. Still wet. Her hand reaching for a desk that didn't exist in this room. And on her shoulder, a smaller hand, already touching her, already printed. And beneath it, the words scratched faintly into the white edge of the photo. We were never supposed to stop recording. Marla didn't knock. She didn't need to. The door to the old staff lounge opened without resistance, soft as breath, lighter than memory. A draft followed her in, thick with chalk and metal and something under that, the distant sweetness of bleach and dead paper. It was colder here than it should have been in late July, colder even than the basement she wasn't allowed in, back when her daughter was still alive, or at least when they pretended she was. The tape recorder waited on the table. Real still, but recently used. The cassette inside had been ejected and left halfway out, like someone had planned to replace it, then forgot what sound was. She pressed it back in. Click. Play. Nothing. Then static. Then her own voice, younger. Cracked, stretched, brittle like a leaf that had tried too long to stay green. You said she ran away. But she left her shoes. What child runs barefoot through snow? She stopped the tape. She remembered saying it once during the interview they never aired. The one they claimed was lost in the archives, misfiled, corrupted, then irrelevant. They'd only asked her to speak once. They hadn't liked the way she looked into the camera when she said, "I heard her knocking." But she had. The summer after the disappearance. 3 knocks, a pause, too quick. Same rhythm as the school's morning. Bell used to chime. The bell was gone now. Removed in 1980. But the knocks kept coming. Some years louder. Some years just barely audible through static in her voicemail. Box. And always at the end, just before the line disconnected, the faint, unmistakable chime of the school bell that hadn't existed for decades. Chime. Chime dash. Chime. She still had every message saved. Even now her phone was in her coat pocket, worn smooth from how many times she'd replayed those seconds. She stepped further into the lounge. It hadn't changed much. Still smelled like erased schedules and decaf coffee. Still had the mirror on the far wall, though now it leaned sideways, cracked along one edge like it had caught a scream in its teeth and shattered from the tension. She caught her reflection. Paused. In the mirror, the staff chairs were filled. Of them, all empty in real life, but in the mirror, they sat still, not moving, not blinking. Just seated. No faces. Just uniforms. And the same twitching of their hands, like they were trying to sign something without words. Behind them, the chalkboard, clean, on the wall. But in the reflection covered. Dozens of dates. Written, erased, written again, all scratched. Over, except one, December 11th, 1978, the day her daughter didn't come home. She turned away from the mirror, tried to breathe. Her hands fumbled through the records box someone had left by the cabinet, half labeled, mostly crossed out. Parent interviews stamped on the side. Red ink. Someone had circled the word parent like it was a liability. Inside, a burnt photo, edges scorched unevenly. Staff members lined in front of the bell tower. Year unclear. But there, second row, half hidden behind a taller man. A child, not posed, not smiling, just there. Her daughter. Same dress. Same hairpin. Same scab just under the right eye, from when she'd tripped on the playground curb. The week before she vanished, the school had said no photo of her existed from that year. Said the yearbook was reprinted after a fire. Said she'd run away. Said maybe she was never enrolled at all. The drawer beneath the recorder rattled. She hadn't touched it, but it opened anyway. Inside, a hymn, torn from a staff devotional manual, only 2 lines left readable. If the children are not heard, let the walls be their witness. Under the paper, a cassette, labeled Bell Log. She inserted it, static again, then footsteps, a woman breathing. Then knocks. 3. Pause. Too quick. Then a faint voice, matching her own from decades ago. I told you, she's not lost. She's locked in. Then chime, chime, then silence. She pressed stop. The mirror's crack moved, not much. Just enough to change the angle. Now the chairs in the reflection were empty, but a 13th chair had appeared. Smaller. Child size. Facing the wrong way, toward the wall. She looked at the real room, still 12 chairs. No child's seat, but the light shifted, as if from a cracked door. Not visible, but present, bleeding in through an opening that had no physical anchor. Behind her, the filing cabinet clicked. It hadn't been opened before. Now, one drawer was slightly ajar. She pulled it. Inside, a name tag. Worn, yellowed letters. Faded but legible. Layla. Her daughter's name. Not in her handwriting. Not a child's scrawl. Block. Letters. Stamped. Like for an employee. Under it, a folded paper. Office memo. Copied from carbon. Lines redacted, but one sentence visible. Parent continues to claim auditory hallucinations tied to discontinued infrastructure. Interview not to be released. She stared at the name tag, turned it over. 1. Words scratched with a pin into the back. Bell. Not capitalized like the first name, just a whisper made solid. She placed the tag beside the tape. Player. The recorder clicked again. Play. It hadn't been touched. Now the voice was fainter. Not hers, not her daughter's. Someone older, slower. They hear her on the line, but only if they never hang up. Then, the same 3 knocks, but further away. Then 2 more. Closer. She turned toward the door. No one. But the fog of breath had appeared on the glass window. Not hers. 2. High. Too wide. And a handprint on the glass, small, smudged. Fingers too long. She stepped back from the mirror. The 13th chair was now empty. But the wall behind it was open. A crack, not like a door. More like a peeled edge of reality, white and humming. Like a screen between channels. And inside that crack, another mirror. And inside that mirror her daughter. Not aged. Not changed. Just blinking, slowly. Then mouthing something. She leaned forward, couldn't hear it, but then tap on the recorder. Mic, followed by a voice. Her daughter's clear. Tell them I still wear my shoes. Tell them I never ran. She turned off the tape, tried to breathe, tried to steady her hands. The cassette was warm. Again, she looked at the tag. The hymn, the mirror. Then back to the Polaroid. It had darkened. Where once was a bell tower, now a smudge. In the center, scratched faintly, answer before the 3rd ring. Her phone buzzed in her coat. Pocket. Unknown number. Her chest tightened. She didn't answer. The window rattled. The mirror cracked again. 1 more line across her reflection's throat. She pulled out her phone. Listened to the voicemail. Just static. Then colon double quotes. Knock. 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 Knock knock. Then silence. Then the bell. 3 times. Then 2. Then the same line from her interview, but warped, mirrored in a child's voice. You said she ran. But what child runs barefoot through snow? She dropped the phone. It didn't land. It just wasn't in her hand anymore. She looked up. Every chair was now facing her, and every backrest had a name tag pinned to it, her daughter's included. The 13th was gone, but the tape player still ran. Still warm, still whispering the bell's rhythm. And behind the glass, her daughter's hand. Waiting. The janitor's key should not have worked. The floor had been sealed since 1991, since the incident they'd redacted without naming. Since the names on the 3rd ledger vanished from every roster, but not from the carved wood beneath the shoes. But the key turned. The door opened. And Reed stepped down into the dark. The stairwell was tight, concrete flaking at the corners. Cold settled against his chest, not from temperature, but from memory. Some part of him had been here before. Some echo of breath down this hallway already belonged to him, though he had no recollection of ever being assigned to this wing. He passed a broken light fixture. It flickered, even without power. Then the smell. Chalk dust. Bleach. Whetstone. Something else beneath it. Shoes. Not worn ones. Kept ones. He turned the corner into the circular room. A place with no architectural justification. Not a storage space. Not a classroom. Not listed on any blueprint he'd ever seen. But it was real. A wide ring of shoes encircled the center. 14 pairs. Small. Untouched by mold or moths. Each facing inward, except one. One pair of girls. Faded red. Frayed at the laces pointed outward. Toward the door. He paused in the entry. Flashlight beam catching dust like snow suspended in breath. The shoes sat on planks, each carved with initials. Some he recognized from the old fire. Drill logs. Others were unknown students, supposedly unenrolled. Children the board had no record of ever admitting. But their names were here, initials etched deep enough to survive time. Flood. Flame. ENJPSCML. And then, Ellie. He froze. That one. He knew, Leela Archer, the girl who'd gone missing in '78. The one whose mother still called the district every year on the anniversary. The one whose photo had appeared in a hallway bulletin board in 2003. Though the staff said it was an editing error, he moved around the circle. 14 initials. 15 names. One section carved twice same pair of initials, side by side. As if to imply a split. A twin. The flashlight dimmed. Then the whisper returned. Not loud. Not spoken. Just dash inside. Closer. He turned. A mirror stood against the far wall. One he hadn't seen on entering. Its glass reflected the circle, but the floor in the reflection was clean. No dust. No carved wood. The shoes were worn. Feet inside them. Children stood still in the mirrored circle. Hands held. All facing inward, except one child. A girl in red shoes. Facing him. Expressionless. Watching. He reached for the flashlight again. Shook it. The beam pulsed once, then died. Total dark. Then light through a cracked door behind him. He turned back. No door. Only wall. But the light stayed faint. Silvery. Leaking through stone. He stepped forward. Floorboards creaked underfoot. Even though the room was concrete. The light came from under a cabinet. One with no drawer. He crouched. Fingers reached beneath met. Cold wood. And a gap. Too small for a hand. But something metallic inside. He coaxed it out with the edge of his ring. A cassette. Label torn. Faint writing left beneath the smudge. Play only if they forget. He stood, unsure why his hands were shaking. Not cold. Not fear. Recognition. He single quotes seeing this tape before. In a drawer that didn't exist. One that opened on its own last week. He hadn't touched it then. Had only looked, but now the whisper again. Closer. He pulled out the old recorder from his SATCHEL. He didn't remember packing it. Didn't remember bringing blank tapes either. But there it was. He pressed play. First. Static. Then. Breath. Then. If the circle breaks, they forget. If the circle breaks, we come back wrong. The voice was not human. Not monstrous either. Just misremembered. Like someone trying to replicate speech they'd only heard in dreams. Then chanting. Children. In rhythm. He counted. 14. Voices. Then a 15th joined in. Off dash beat. Echoed. Then. Silence. A hairline crack split the mirror. Reed didn't hear it. He felt it deep in the roots of his molars, in the ache behind his eyes. In the mirror. The girl in red turned her head. But in real space, no one moved. Still silence. He approached the floor. One of the shoes. The right from the outward pair was missing. Gone. Checked again. Gone. The initials that sat above, now scratched through LA, became X. No other marks. He stood. One of the other shoes twitched, not visibly. But when he blinked, its laces had shifted. He turned back to the cabinet. The hymn was pinned there now. He hadn't seen it before. Torn from the ledger he'd seen in the Parrot archives. Different hand. But the same passage remained. If the children are not heard, let the walls be their witness. Under it, a burnt photo. The circle of children. Same shoes. Same room. But dated 1961. He flipped it. On the back, in graphite, the circle doesn't break. It waits. He held the photo too long. Long enough for the breath on the glass behind him to reappear. He turned. The mirror, FOGG. No reflection now. Just the girl. Close. Looking. Out. Hand pressed to the other side. A handprint that hadn't been there. Then the floor groaned. He stepped back. One of the planks beneath the shoes lifted. Slightly. As if something underneath had exhaled. And from inside the recorder, the same phrase again. Closer. Only now it was his voice. Warped. Dragged backward. SLC. He dropped the cassette. The tape unspooled. It didn't fall. It rose. Hung in air. Threading toward the shoes. Toward the center. Then curled around the empty space where the missing shoe had been. The recorder clicked. The door slammed behind him. He didn't flinch. He understood now. He wasn't meant to leave with answers. He was meant to remember what they'd erased. The names. The circle. The waiting. He stepped into the center, where no shoes lay, where no names were carved. Only a mirror shard. Face down. He turned it over. In the glass, it was daylight. Outside. Children laughing. One of them, holding a clipboard, calling names. 14. Responses. Then one more. Off dash camera. A girl's voice. I'm here. I've always been here. He looked at his reflection in the shard. He wasn't older. He was younger. And in his hand a shoe. Small. Red. Facing inward. He placed it down. The last in the circle. Had completed itself. The mirror crack sealed. The floor held its breath. And behind him, the voice whispered again. Not closer. Not louder. Just clearer. You were the 15th, and now you remember. He turned once more toward the wall, and carved there, freshly etched into stone, RE-1978. His own initials, but he hadn't started work here until 1982. He stepped back. The shoes didn't move. The mirror didn't crack, but the recorder kept playing, and his voice, his child voice echoed. If the circle breaks, we come back wrong. He had meant to catalog them. That's all. That was the assignment. Open the archive drawer marked Student Art, 1955, 1982, and scan whatever hadn't turned to mildew. A formality before the files were scheduled to be pulped. Red ink marked the corner of the envelope. Deaccession approved. But when Hal unlatched the drawer, it groaned. Not mechanically. It groaned. A sound not of rusted rails but of something caught beneath, dragging. He paused. Inhaled. Chalk dust and varnish. Faint glue. Older still paper that had held breath too long. The first drawing he touched flaked at the edge. Crayon on parchment. Dated 1959. Spiral. Red. Child drawn, uneven but deliberate. Thick lines overlapped where the child had pressed too hard. At its center, a desk. And around the spiral's edges other desks, like orbiting moons. Each one had a stick figure sitting, except one. That desk was open, and drawn next to it something that couldn't have been made by a child, something with too many limbs. He blinked, looked at the label again. L.A., Room 2. C. Layla Archer. Again. The same child whose name had returned in the circle of shoes. He set the drawing aside. Picked up another. Different name. Same pattern. Same spiral. Same empty desk. Same figure. Wider now. Messier. The hands dragged beyond the margins. This time the desk bore a label. Tiny, scrawled in a hand too careful to be random. Observer. He hadn't noticed it before, but now every sketch had it. Same shape. Same desk. Same hollow figure near the back. And now that he looked closer, in each drawing, somewhere tiny, watching from the margins, a figure holding a clipboard, drawn smaller than the rest. Different. Shirt. No face, but always present. Always near the wall. The wall with the crack in it. He rose. That wall still existed. In room 2C, they never repaired it. Only repainted. But the paint peeled the same way every year. As if memory were pushing through. Hal left the archive room. The tape recorder in his bag turned itself on. He didn't hear it. He only heard footsteps, his own, on floorboards that should have been sealed in tile. The hallway narrowed. The overhead light buzzed, then stopped, and buzzed again. White. Buzz. White. Buzzed. Light. Breath held, released, then caught again. He passed the hallway photo case. The glass was fogged. A HANDPR. INT. Small. Facing inward. Not pressed from outside. He pressed his palm to it. Didn't fit. Too small. Child. Sized. Still fresh. He kept walking. Room 2C. Looked wrong. Even in the dim. Desks still in a circle. Chairs all facing inward. No lesson plan ever used this arrangement, but no one ever changed it. Every year someone would push the chairs back. Without knowing why, he entered. The smell hit first. Chalk. Glue. Something else beneath. A faint burning. Like hair. Or cloth. He stepped around the ring of desks. Stopped at the far wall. The crack was still there. Hairline. It moved slightly as he looked. Not. Shifted. Breathed. Like it saw him. Like it recognized him. He turned back. On the teacher's desk, an envelope. No dust on it. As if placed today. He opened it. Inside. A burnt photo. Edges curled inward. Blackened. But the center still clear. Children. Desks. Spiral. And in the back him. Not older. Not now. But younger. Drawn in crayon. Reel in photograph. Same clipboard. Same shirt. He blinked. There'd never been cameras in room 2C. Not in 77. Not in 62. Not in 99. But this photo bore a timestamp. The 11th of April 2031. 6 years ahead. And yet aged. Cracked. Archived. Below it. In pencil. He always watched the wall. He never knew he drew it. He dropped the photo. Stepped back. Hit a desk. Felt something underneath. A drawer. One that shouldn't exist. None of the student desks had drawers. He pulled it open. Inside. Sketches. Not old. Fresh. Still smelling of graphite. And on each page, the same spiral. The same malformed figure. The same open desk. And the same tiny man. With the clipboard. Watching. Except now he had eyes. Drawn. Dark. Bleeding. Ink. Looking out. Looking at him. The light flickered. A whisper behind him. A child's voice. Not recent. Not remembered, but familiar. I didn't mean to draw it. It drew. M.E. He turned. No one there. But the breath stayed. Fog on the window glass. He reached for the window latch, but it didn't open. Instead, faint scratch marks on the sill. Initials. Carved in. Overlapping. Some crossed out. One. Circled. H.M. His own. Dated. Wrong. He wasn't born until 1983. He backed away. One of the chairs. Turned slightly. Not tipped. Not moved. Turned. Now facing out from the circle. Toward him. He stepped forward. Lifted the seat. Another. Drawing. Folded tightly. He unfolded it slowly. This one wasn't. Crayon. Pen. Precise. Surgical. The spiral wasn't centered anymore. It was broken. Split. And in the breach. Names. 14. Then one more. U. The line circled back. Looped into itself. A spiral of rolls. Child. Observer. Child. Again. He felt the weight then, not of knowledge, but of placement. He'd been here before. Not once. Not linearly. The building remembered. The spiral didn't forget. He turned to leave, but the door wouldn't open. He pressed harder, still no give. Then, the crack widened. Dust spilled out. Behind the wall movement. Not. Sound. Movement. As if desks shifted. As if drawings rearranged. As if someone redrew the spiral and pulled him back inside it. He tried the window. Again. Glass. Cold. Fogg. Did. But through it a face. Not his. Not reflected. Just watching. A girl. Familiar. Same dress from the missing bulletin photos. The 15th. Layla. No. Not Layla. The one who never had a name. Just a desk. Just a shape in drawings. Her mouth moved. You forgot. The recorder in his bag clicked. Static. Then a loop. Over and over. He never knew he drew it. He never knew he drew it. He never knew. He opened the bag. Inside, not the recorder, a mirror. Not his. Old. Cracked. And in it, he saw the desk. His desk. He was sitting, holding the clipboard. But the paper in his hand wasn't blank. It was the spiral, drawn in red. Signed. With his initials and a date. Tomorrow. He looked up. One desk scraped forward. Another turned inward. The circle reformed itself. And on the wall above the crack, a hymn began to appear, letter by letter, not ink, scratched from beneath. Let him who observes become the lesson. The lights shut off, but in the dark, his own voice whispered, I didn't mean to draw it. The room responded, but you always do. The last survivor didn't want to speak on camera. Only audio. She sat in a soundproofed room 3 floors below the public archive, beneath an abandoned wing once labeled Observation Overflow. The sign had been peeled away, but the imprint still pressed through the paint like memory through. Forgetting. Eleanor West, age 74, fingers trembling but firm. She wore a cross that had long since lost its chain. Held it like a habit, no purse, no phone. Just a hymn folded in 4 in her jacket pocket. Torn from a book long out of print. On the tape, her voice started with silence. Then, I don't remember. Her face, I just remember not looking at it. The archivist he didn't give a name leaned into the mic, asked if she meant Layla. She shook her head. The gesture caught in the mirror, not in the room. Not her, the other one. The one we weren't allowed to draw. The tape hiccuped there. A flick of static. Like a blink, the recorder tried to forget. Eleanor tapped her fingers against the desk in groups of 3. She wasn't buried. Not like the others. She was just left. Where? The archivist asked. In the year that didn't happen. She reached into her coat. Slid forward a photograph no one had requested. Burnt at the edges. Faces mostly intact. The class of 68, room 4B. 13 children, standing straight. All but one looking forward. At the corner. Barely visible behind the glass reflection, another face. Blurry. Watching. Hair too long for regulation. Eyes half closed like someone who'd just woken or never fully did. When the archivist tried to scan it, the device froze, not crashed, paused. Like something else was watching the scanner and choosing. The lights flickered, then returned. You said she wasn't on the roster, he whispered. Eleanor unfolded another slip of paper. Handwritten. Faded ink. A page from the original attendance log, 1970 to 1975. A name scribbled, then crossed out. The same name re-entered the next year. Crossed out again. 6 years in a row. Always the same line through it, not erased. Just denied. She pointed to the name but didn't say it. The recorder picked up her breath tight, shuddering. Then she whispered. She never screamed. That was the problem. She watched, like a teacher. Do you remember her name? I do. And then on the tape a sound cut through. A bell, clear. Distant. Recorded. But somehow inside the room. The same bell they removed in 1980 after the collapse. That's hers, Eleanor whispered. She never got picked up. So they made the bell ring for her. The archivist reached for his notebook. Found a drawing tucked between pages. Not his pencil, child drawn. The spiral again. But this time, At the center, not a desk, a bell, and behind it, a mirror, cracked, reflecting. A year written backwards. 3102. No. Not a year. Not a date. A code. The mirror, when he turned, didn't reflect him anymore. It showed the classroom. Room 4B. Empty chairs. Then chairs filled. Then empty again, like breath. Like repetition. Eleanor was gone from the reflection, but still. In the room, still speaking. We all remembered at different times. Some in sleep, some in mirrors. Some when the floor creaked and no one else was home. The archivist leaned forward. The mic hissed slightly. He asked her again, gently, what was her name? Eleanor pressed the hymn page flat on the desk. The corners had tiny bite marks, not from insects, from teeth. Small, square. Children, single quotes, S. She turned the page over. Wrote one word. Mari Bell. Then added below in smaller script, no one born. No one buried, but always marked present. The room went still. The soundproofed walls trembled slightly, just enough to rustle a paperclip off the desk. It hit the floor. Rolled. Stopped at the door. A hairline crack appeared beneath it. The archivist didn't notice at first. He was staring at the red light on the recorder. It flickered once, then twice. Then shut off. The tape inside ejected on its own. Still warm, he touched it. Burned slightly when he looked up. Eleanor was staring at him, not his eyes through him, like something behind him. Required witnessing. He turned. Behind the two-way mirror, nothing but concrete. No. Hallway. No reflection. Just breath. Fog blooming. Softly across the glass, a handprint appeared, fingertips first. Then full palm, small. Child-sized. Then another dot and another. 15 total. Pressed from within. The archivist staggered back. Hit the shelf behind him. A drawer popped open. One. That shouldn't exist. Inside burnt attendance pages. Every name. Every year. Scribbled out, except one. Mari Bell. Each page bore a different version of her handwriting. Sometimes block letters, sometimes cursive, sometimes backward. Always the same sentence. Still here. The lights dimmed again, from the recorder's internal mic, even though it was no longer running a voice. Her voice, young, clear, familiar in that way only trauma makes familiar. You left me. So I stayed. The tape snapped back into the device. On its own. Spun. Play engaged. But no sound. Just the archivist's own interview voice playing in reverse. His voice, saying words he never said. She is not missing. We just stopped looking. The lights in the observation room flickered. A low ring buzzed through the floorboards. Not electric. Bell. From beneath. The lights failed entirely. A mirror. Cracked. One line down the middle. Like a seam opening. The recorder hissed again. Then. Say. It. The archivist whispered back. Maribel. The crack widened. From the floor behind him. Dust spilled. And then a sound behind the wall. Shuffling. Dragging. Children, single quotes, as feet. Or something that remembered. Being children. The recorder stopped. Red light blinked once. Then off. Permanently. When the footage was recovered. Half of it was corrupted. Only fragments remained. Intercut static. Overlapping whispers. And one frame frozen on the mirror's reflection. A girl. Face half turned. Smile not right. Holding a burnt attendance log. Behind her. Rows of desks. Each empty. Except one. Where the archivist now sat. Head bowed. Hand raised. Present. And in the corner. Scratched into the reflection's bottom edge. We forgot her on purpose. But her name was still there. Line through it, or not. Maribel. Still here. He came back because of the voicemail. It was only static at first, long humming, breathless static, but then came the bell. One tone, familiar in a way he refused to unpack. Then the voice, his name spoken softly, a girl's voice. And then silence. The message had no TIMES TAMP. But the bell was unmistakable. They'd removed it in 1980, he remembered. He had the archived floor plans. The basement had been sealed that same year. Concrete poured over the stairs, ledger rewritten to say, no lower level. He had the key anyway. It wasn't official. But he knew where they kept the redacted blueprints, the drawer that shouldn't exist hidden beneath the roll-top desk in the superintendent's old office. He'd found it by accident. Or maybe the drawer had opened for him. It wasn't the first time the building gave him what he didn't ask for. He didn't tell anyone he was coming. There wasn't anyone left to tell. Just the echo of older investigators, each one silent now. Only their files remained. Most of them blacked out. The handwriting changed halfway through the binder, though the name on the cover didn't. He walked the old hallway slowly, the floor beneath him bowing inward in places. That strange sink of wood that knew where footsteps used to be. The door was still painted shut. Room 4B. He peeled it back. No light switches, just a wire hanging, cut. He waited for his eyes to adjust. Then entered. The shoes were there. 14 pairs, not dusty. Not moved since the last time. But they weren't in the same position. They had been side by side. Now they formed a circle. One pair, small, scuffed, toes frayed, was turned outward. Facing him, the carved floor beneath them was still there too. A circle of initials. Each child's name etched around the shoes. He ran his fingers over them. They had not aged, but one initial was missing, scraped out. As though someone had dug at it with a knife, he looked up. A mirror leaned against the far wall. He hadn't remembered a mirror. It was old, spotted with mold in its corners. But the reflection showed the classroom from a different year. Not present. Not past. The chalkboard had different writing. The desks were arranged backwards. The shoes were not there. And in the reflection, a girl stood by the door, watching him. She wasn't in the room. Only in the mirror. He stepped closer. The date on the blackboard behind her read, Field Trip October 12, 1983. But this school was shut down by then. He reached out, then paused. His breath fogged the glass, but so did hers. A second bloom of condensation. Her breath, across. From his then dash slowly, a handprint appeared next to it. Small. Child single quotes S. The shoes behind him moved. Just a shuffle. Leather against wood. He turned sharply. They were back to rows now, straight, neat, institutional. One pair missing. He glanced at the door. Still shut. He bent down. Traced the gap where the missing shoes had been. Dust in the shape of an absence. Then he noticed, underneath the shoe prints, bare footprints. Tiny, leading toward him. He followed them with his eyes until they stopped behind his own. Then another step, a new one. Just appeared. He didn't move. Something else had. He turned back. To the desk. The ledger was still open. Same page as before. Same redacted rows. Except now at the bottom his name was written. Fresh ink. No line through it. He hadn't added it. He hadn't brought a pen, but it was his name. And beneath it, in the same handwriting as the erased children, shoes will fit. He looked down. 15 pairs now. The missing set had returned. New. Adult sized, his size. He reached toward them, stopped, then pulled his hand back. A sound came from the wall. Scraping. Not random. Measured. Like someone was dragging a desk across concrete, rhythmically. Then silence. Then again, the bell one tone, and then the whisper. We made room. He backed toward the door, slowly. It opened without touch. Not from him. From the other side. Light spilled through a sickly gold flicker from a cracked bulb. A hallway that shouldn't exist. He stepped out, but it wasn't the hallway he entered. From this one sloped slightly, downward. The walls were lined with lockers. Each with a number, none with names. Except one. Scratched into locker 312. She knows you. He didn't stop walking. The farther he went, the quieter it got, until the silence thickened. Became humid. Then he saw it. Another mirror, freestanding. Propped against the far wall. The same mirror from room 4B. Same dust. Same mold. Same reflection. Only now, in the mirror he wasn't alone. He was already standing there. Back turned. Hands. Reaching down to tie a pair of shoes. The same shoes. 15th. Pair. Laced. Fitted. On him. He blinked. His own shoes felt heavier. He didn't look down. He turned back. The hallway was gone. Just a room again. Same. Desks. Same chalkboard. Different writing. Attendance taken. Door sealed. He walked back to the circle. The shoes hadn't moved. But now, each had a name tag. He bent to read them. Each one was his handwriting. Even the ones from the 60s. And the new pair? No tag. Just a torn corner of a hymn page. Tucked inside the left shoe. A line he remembered, but didn't know where from. Let the quiet ones rise first. Then behind him, a whisper. Almost done. He turned. A drawer in the corner had opened. One that wasn't there before. Inside another bird photo. A class picture. This time, he was in it. Smiling. Standing in the back row. Next to her. Her face blurred again. But her hand held his. He dropped the photo. Looked up. The mirror now showed only the shoes. But they were moving. Arranging. Slow. Deliberate. As if an unseen hand still worked here. Still cared. They slid into place. Into a circle again. And this time, the 15th pair pointed inward. The bell rang one last time. He looked toward the door. Still closed. Still painted shut. Still no handle. He turned back to the shoes. Each one now perfectly aligned. Waiting. Still warm. Just his size.